Proposition 196. If we took an electron neutrino and could zoom in so it was as large as Laniakea, why should we predict the mass and energy would be uniformly distributed or singularly condensed when co-moving frames of reference is what we already see everywhere else? Proposition 197. We live in an eternally infinite universe made from an infinite number of separate nested pockets of relative pressurized space-time mass energy heat radiation that continue inwards and outwards for an infinite number of different scale factors. Proposition 198. When we accept a universe made from an infinite number of separate nested pockets of space-time, then as we zoom out, we would predict that at some larger scale factor, we would eventually have to see the same average relative density of mass and relative density of energy across the same relative density of time and density of space to repeat in such a way as to see the physics dictated by a fine structure constant reproducing a periodic table of elements at a far, far larger scale factor. Proposition 199, a larger scale periodic table reproducing is a prediction of a truly infinite spacetime. When eventually the same density distribution of mass and energy across relative space and time occurs, we expect to see the physics we are familiar with reproduce naturally. Others call it infinite regression, where there is in fact no smallest measurement of time, space, mass, or energy. Many mistakenly feel this creates a paradox, but closer inspection points to this being the only true 100% paradox-free explanation for the nature of eternal time and infinite space. Proposition 200. The slower you move through space, the faster you move through time. So subquantum periodic tables that could occur hundreds of thousands or millions of nested co-moving frames of reference below Planck scales would see differentials of potentially tens of thousands of years for each of our seconds. 100 billion years could pass in the span of one day on our planet. Proposition 201. Some people toss around the idea that our entire universe is inside an atom in a bigger universe, but don't grasp that only works if there is an infinite regression of smaller and larger scale factors. We can't just have our universe and the one we're inside of without an endless chain. Proposition 202. If a species was provided with an eternal source of nutrition and nourishment and medicine, and could escape each star system long before the host stars go nova, it is not impossible to imagine that an evolutionary process could continue indefinitely. Something eternal cannot have a beginning, and that is a clue that the evolutionary process likely did not either. Proposition 203. There is no indication that evolution could not be an eternal and infinite process if life is afforded the luxury of continued sustenance, nourishment, energy, and even medicines. Something that is eternal by definition, therefore, cannot have a starting point. Proposition 204. If there were an infinite number of scale factors, then occasionally some civilizations would flourish for tredecillions and centillions of years to the point where they have colonized superclusters and allowed their evolutionary chains to evolve into unfathomable number of different iterations. Peaceful civilizations that spread the word of equality and partnership could in theory someday possibly evolve past their corporeal form. Proposition 205. When we already see the fortitude of tardigrades and the resilience of chemoautotrophic bacteria and the marvels of photosynthesis, it is beyond naive to expect anything other than multicellular life forms evolving across the majority of wet rocks that have the basic elements needed to support life, some type of heat source, and either steam or water present. Proposition 206. Eternal evolution means that first life on dead wet rocks evolves through the atomic layer at the time the right byproducts are present to support it. Life evolves everywhere it can spawn and takes hold everywhere it can flourish. Either physical evolution is occurring through the atomic layer, which is possible, or some type of aggregation of whatever consciousness is evolves into our atomic layer. Proposition 207. Not sure I agree with using alternate dimension to describe the realms of periodic tables that exist at other scale factors. They reside in the same 4 dimensions we do, but just not relative to us. I see them as our next largest significant atomic layer and our next smallest significant atomic layer. Proposition 208. If the infinite space at our scale factor was not enough of a multiverse for you, when we consider other scale factors, the true nature of the real multiverse begins to emerge. Every second, universes being created inside every atom, where occasionally the same starting parameters that we saw repeat again. Proposition 209. Of the possible options as to what might happen after death, the concept of eternal pain or eternal pleasure based on decisions made during a tiny, finite sliver of existence defies all logic. Instead, what little evidence we have seems to point to an evolving soul. Everything that ever was or ever will be was the direct result of multiple forms of evolution. So, if there is a soul, then it likely evolves. Proposition 210. The little evidence we have indicates some children have innate memories and can speak foreign languages or play musical instruments or excel in mathematics or chess without ever being taught. Thousands of other documented cases of past memories and details of prior lives have been logged by reliable research teams. We also see animals throughout the world born with knowledge of how to perform tasks without being taught. All this points to the probability of an evolving soul. Proposition 211. Our best understanding of the standard model of particle physics tells us that tiny vibrations of energy creates everything that we can see and hear and touch. Yet it is also vibrations of energy that provides us the light that lets us see, the sounds that let us hear, and even the resistance that lets us touch. Proposition 212. If energy cannot be created or destroyed, then the fact we can see immense amounts of energy in all directions we peer into, including deep within the atom, means that energy must have existed forever and is only now relative to us at these relative points in time and space. Proposition 213. The probabilistic nature of quantum mechanics shows us a universe that creates itself moment by moment. And being both infinite and eternal means there was no moment of creation. A universe that creates itself moment by moment needs no moment of creation. Proposition 214. The simple problem with an eternal and omnipotent creator and its finite creation means that some being spent an infinite eternity first before creating all there is, sitting alone in empty darkness void of anything, fully capable at any moment to bring forth everything, but choosing to wait an infinite span of time before doing so. One of many problems and paradoxes associated with a moment of creation. Proposition 215. If you see the paradoxes invoked by having an eternal creator and finite creation, apply your concept of infinitely eternal energy to be both the creation and the creator, and see they are one and the same. An eternal universe that creates itself moment by moment needs no moment of creation. Proposition 216. Infinite and eternal 4D Minkowski spacetime with an infinite amount of mass and infinite amount of energy at an infinite number of scale factors is unfathomable. Yet it remains the only true paradox-free explanation for existence, and once accepted, it shows us very elegantly how almost all the current mysteries of science begin to literally unravel at our feet. Unlike current theories, it offers multiple avenues towards falsifiability or validation. Proposition 217. If there was no hot dense center that spawned our spacetime, but instead a succession of superluminal collisions, then there is no big crunch, eternal inflation, or conformal cyclic cosmology. Just a different version of a steady-state universe made of an infinite number of separate nested co-moving frames of reference occasionally crossing paths.